Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Jim and Rob Over-Analyze Movies, a live video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. And today, of course, I believe last week you might have remembered we're kind of juggling between which movies we were going to talk about. Today, we're actually going to talk about Robert Eggers' latest, an epic in the Icelandic saga sense of the word, The Northman. Let me grab my show notes here, folks. Here we are. From IMDb, an action filled epic that follows a young Viking prince on his quest to avenge his father's murder and rescue his kidnapped mother. As I said before, it was directed by Robert Eggers. He wrote this with Sjón, which is just a one name kind of a la Björk, nickname condensation of an Icelandic writers. That's how he goes by. It stars Alexander Skarsgård in the eponymous of the starring role as the Northman, Amlet. It also stars Nicole Kidman, Claes, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke, Björk, and Willem Dafoe. This film, let's get into the social nutrition checklist. Would it have qualified for a reframe stamp? No. Was it union made? Well, there were union actors, so it meets that minimum requirement. It does not pass the Bechdel test, or I don't believe it did. And is it class conscious? No. An interesting note here, apparently Mr. Eggers he stated that he did this and he wanted it in part because he wanted to take this idea of Vikings and Viking mythology away from the wackadoo white supremacists who've kind of co-opted this, this Viking and Norse mythology as their own for a fascist or neo ideal. So on that note, of course, it's a bunch of white people talking about white stuff with two major women characters who are mostly concerned about their children. Anyway, that's so with that out of the way, I want to welcome. Oh, actually, I got one more thing to talk about. But you know what? I want to welcome my co-host, and we can talk about this together. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jim Cheboyko. How are you doing, my friend?
Guten Tag. I don't know.
Okay, that's not
German?
Norse, Norwegian,
It's
Swedish.
all the same.
None of it. Yeah.
Same vague area.
All right. Well, yeah.
Good. Good. Sweating in the 35-degree heat, which is quite unlike the shores of Iceland and various islets up there. But doing well. I might be perspiring a bit here, but other than that, good. How about you?
Pretty good. It is. Yeah, it's a hot one.
Yeah.
Hot and humid. That said, I've been doing all right. Busy. Got really excited about some of the stuff I'm doing with a client of mine right now. And I'm excited about as we get deeper into what we're trying to accomplish here, Jim, with Jim and Rob Over-Analyze Movies. And that brings me to another segment. And we also got an audience mailbag. So we got two things going on. Actually, you know what? Why don't we do mailbag and then we'll get into our new segment?
Sure.
How's that?
Yeah.
All right. It's audience mailbag. Hey. Everybody. We do have there's a mailbag item. Last week, of course, we took a look at Everything Everywhere All at Once. And we got a great, a great comment, actually. You know what? From Jeff Goofrider, which I think is nice, having a lot of fun with that, and that's cool. Yes, Mr. Let's call him Jeff.
Is that Dutch?
Jeff begins. Okay. And he's commenting regarding the meaning, the themes of the piece. And I'll just read the beginning of his comment. And you can go. I'll put a pointer, probably somewhere over there, to our last week's Everything Everywhere All at Once over analysis, and then you can use the chapter markers to jump to the meaning. But anyway, Jeff goes, it'd be pretty reductive to say the movie is simply about love. There are a lot of themes in this movie: generational trauma, finding meaning in the overstimulation of modern life, regrets of roads not taken, existential despair and the nihilism it leads to, kindness as a means to combat it and connect with people through the noise, etc. And most importantly, and I think this is where I disagree with Jeff on a couple of items, Jim, but and most importantly, how these things make our central characters feel through the progression of the film. Again, on the general thing, I think, and he goes on, folks, so go check out his comment, engage him in the best way, because he really does he's committed to, contributing to the conversation. That's wonderful. Yeah. And he makes some he does elaborate on his points, and he makes some interesting points that are worth saying. That said, I don't think we're being that simplistic. As a matter of fact, Jim, if I remember correctly, and of course I do, because I checked the tape, you had proposed, is it as simple as love? And then like a minute later, basically said no to your own question. It's like, yeah, it's not that simple. And we had a very interesting discussion. Of course, within the 15 minutes we gave ourselves, we couldn't quite get cover as many bases. That said, I thought our take was pretty good given the construct of our show. And it's for us trying to have a conversation about learning about a film and about film. I still think we do pretty good. I'm giving this an A, Jim, maybe an A-. So solid B plus at least.
If I had said, could it be just this, and then abandon it, that could be like a, sort of like the debate, sort of a cheaty debate sneak. Just like, and I just say, that? I don't know.
You know what? That works for me.
Watch me juggle, and then distract people or something like that. But the movie is about a lot. At the same time, I'm always cautious about sort of grafting my own thing onto a movie, whether it's there or not. I think meaning in a movie is something that you can. I don't think there's a finite kind of definition of that. So but it does cover a lot. I think we mentioned a few things. My wife. I
class,
my wife's
diversity,
and
your wife's
mother-daughter stuff and that kind of thing. So, but it was a good comment from Jeff, and I always he obviously spent some time on it, and really appreciate the effort in communication, because you're sitting there and constructing, and whenever I send something like that, it usually takes me a few minutes to put something like that out. So
and you know what, thanks, Jim, like. I agree with just about everything he brought up. That was all. If we decided we're just going to do an hour on the meaning and all the possible themes of this film, everything he said, I would hope would come up. They were all valid things to chat about, at least to kind of go, is that really here? The one thing I would say is, and this is something where maybe Jeff isn't familiar with the kind of the way our show rolls. But at the end, of just again, this is just like the first sentence of his second sentence of his more fulsome comment, talking about how these things make our characters feel as they progress through the film. And it's like, well, I think we talked a lot about that in the story, and that is more of a story element. For those of you who are new to the show, and I think Jeff was. One of the reasons we break it, we go craft, and that's before we get in the spoilers, and we talk about story, and we talk about meaning, is to make sure we actually talk about, okay, did the story really make sense? Did the character show that arc? Or maybe the film didn't require a character growth arc. What was that? And then when you get into the themes of the movie, sort of the overarching point of it all, that can be that, to make sure we actually have that conversation instead of just going, oh yeah, and there was themes of love. Because you find one of the bummers for a film review, and I like to think of us as, Jim, we sit in the middle space. There's the film review folks. I'm thinking about our great colleagues, Cody from the Brock side, Dragon Movie Guy, the higher end folks such as Breakfast All Day, Alonso Duralde and Chrissy Lemire, who I vehemently disagree on her interpretation of Persuasion.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later.
Sure.
We're not the video essayist where we'll take one film and one aspect of a film and really, almost like write a paper for it. But we're not here. We've given ourselves 10 minutes. We want to give an idea of what the film's about, whether or not it's worth your time, some of the highlights, which, is a creative constraint. We're trying to sit in that middle ground. And I think, again, I'll pat ourselves on the back again. We do that quite well. Think of this as the conversation after a film studies class where the prof is, we've watched the film, now we're going to talk about it. Which is pretty...
Yeah. Well, in olden days, it would be going to the Union Center after classes at UW when they were beside each other. Like, hey, how you doing?
Okay. Anyway, let's get back to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of people already in the chat, or a lot of chat going on. And I want to say hello to those folks. But first, I want to talk about a new segment. And that is Historicity. Now here, because we've looked at films that are based on true events, or like this one that's purporting to be while not an accurate retelling of this legend, it is trying to base it in some historically accurate context, which is the Viking era of what is Scandinavian history, where Scandinavian history and legend meet. Jim, I don't know about you. Like, this is always a tough one. First of all, one of the great things about this, now that we're doing this, is as I watched the film, I was like, wow, this seems really Shakespearean. Oh, would you look at this? This Amlet. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, that makes sense. But yes, folks, this, just to give you some historical context, this movie is a take on the Scandinavian legend of Amlet, a Scandinavian prince of yore, who, fought with his brother over a king, all this stuff. Father patricide, regicide, all this. And the Robert Eggers, and of course, this is the core legend that Shakespeare based Hamlet on. Robert Eggers then decides, as he's done, with the Vivitch and the Lighthouse, where he's trying to at least get the context right, historically accurate, the costumery, the general approach, like the general organization of a village and of a raiding party and berserkers and whatnot. Folks, Jim, I don't know about you. You could kill yourself. The internet's a crazy place. I am not giving any links to anyone who's commenting on whether or not that braid was right, or they never would have done that, or in part because I don't think that's the point of this movie. But I think this is a great opportunity, especially because Eggers is making this big claim, We have put together for you folks some great links down in the description. One is to let's say a creative retelling of Amlet, but let's say as accurate as, which version of the legend you choose. This guy, it's down in the description. It's a YouTube video. Gives a nice overview. Tells the tale as though you're around the fire. Then there's also a few Wikipedia links. One to, again, the Legend of Amlet that gives a lot of context. The Viking Age, and a link to Hamlet, because I think it's all going to come up as we talk about this movie. So there we go. That's the historicity. Do you want to add anything to that before we move forward?
Just a little bit of an anecdote that's sort of similar to what you're experiencing when you're watching this in pre-research. We had my sister-in-law who doesn't often watch a lot of old movies, and somebody put on Casablanca for her, and she said, "I've heard all these lines before." And that sort of reminded me, well, yes, because this is the source. So when I was watching this, this is reminding me of so many things. There's Oedipus, there's The Lion King, there's Hamlet.
Yeah,
and I
at no point did is weirdly in here.
At no point did I put Amlet and Hamlet together. I was pretty late anyway, but I looked it up after as I did. I'm like, this is kind of similar. Bad uncle, dark hair. Anyway.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that it reminded me of, but afterwards I sort of cottoned on to why. So you can't really criticize a movie for being, derivative. Not that I was looking at doing that, but you thought, is this just my imagination? But it was kind of a funny little brain path that this took for me.
Yeah. Okay, well, on that note, then let's move forward. Before we get into the meat of everything, let's quickly say hello to everybody in the chat. And sorry, folks, I'm going to scroll up quickly. First of all, we've got the newest Twitch affiliate. Mr. Ahmed, Jelly Duck 100. Yes, woo. Congratulations. Great accomplishment, folks. For those of you who don't know, Jelly Duck 100 is a Twitch streamer, and he has now reached affiliate status. So if you ever go on Twitch, maybe Ahmed, if you could put up as best as you can. I know YouTube always kind of deletes links, but twitch.tv. In the chat, that would be awesome. And that'll also be my reminder to throw a link or in a pinned comment or something. But congratulations, Jelly Duck. Matthew, Mr. Boren. Great to see you here from the down under. I can't help myself.
How you going?
That's terrible.
How you going, Matthew?
Crikey. Matt, great to see you here. Really cool. And then, we got, who's that? Is that Richard L? And I'm sure Katie Fowler will be around as well, but good to see you, Richard L. And Richard L and Katie F here. We just came from camping in 35 degrees. How did you do it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. I am not. I might be going camping with these guys. Note the might now all of a sudden because of this heat. But Riding Mountain, a local camp, national park here in Canada. We are, of course, broadcasting live from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
I call the stream, just as you set your tent up in running water.
Yeah, of course, Ahmed and Matt must be both kind of, yeah, sure, that's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cry me a river.
It's like a crisp spring morning there. Excuse me.
All right. Well, that's fantastic, folks. Great to see you. So glad you're all here. Now let's get back into the show we are talking about. Oh yeah, that would be this. And before we move into the spoiler zone, why don't we talk a bit about the craft, the performances, anything noteworthy about the production design or anything. Although I suspect these things will come up as points as we get into story and meaning. And maybe start us off with your general spoiler-free first impressions.
Yeah, well, I was impressed. It's a very intense movie, so the cast has to have
very much
buy-in. So. When you watch something that's a little bit of a knockoff or something from maybe made in a different market, and maybe something from the CW, for instance, and not everyone's like 100% into it. Yeah. This one, everyone was sort of dialed right in. Super intense movie. And so the cast sort of deserves, I think, some credit there. There's a great sense of composition of the shots in this. People are running back-to-back shots on Twitter of this and some scenes from The Witch or The Vivitch, which was his first movie, which I really liked.
Anna Taylor-Joy. Like that had to be one of her big movies.
I think so.
If not her very first.
Yeah. And in terms of the I did have some issues with the look of it a bit. There was a lot of computer use. I think some of it better than others. Of course, I always joke that no computer was used in the making of this movie. Of course, every movie uses computers these days. You can't avoid it. But there's a couple of the shots there, especially
Persuasion.
He was when
has a VFX budget.
oh yeah. But when Amlet was sort of creeping around the farm at night in the second, later on anyway, I won't give too much away. It was in dark, and it almost seemed to be kind of black and white. And then there was a few things that were set off by color, and it almost looked like one of those medication ads from the States. Like, are you tired of being a Viking? And I that's my go-to was that it looked like one of those. Is the raping and pillaging not doing it for you anymore? And he was looking sad, and so there's a little bit. We can talk about this later. Is that the movie was so intense and so serious that at times it almost went sort of overboard for me anyway. But in terms of the shots, some of the shots were better. I like the sense of composition, but sometimes the execution was a little weird. I don't know about you. How did you feel about any aspects of the craft that you thought were notable?
I mean, in general, we'll start there. In general, you know what? This is I feel this is a pretty good missed opportunity. Will it go down as one of the greats? No, in part because I think he's swinging. Eggers is making a big swing here.
Yes, yeah,
and he is fouling it off. He is not. He's not missing. He didn't strike out, but he was not getting the big hit he was looking for. Whereas there's others, and I mean, we could be talking about the movie we were thinking of, which is one direction you can take on this mythic context. Mm-hmm. Or you can look at something like The 13th Warrior, which is based on Michael Crichton's The Eaters of the Dead, or even, oh my goodness, I'm trying to remember. It's on Netflix now. The Outlander. Not Outland, The Outlander. Jim Caviezel. Caviezel. That's it. All right.
It's Basque. It's from the Basque country, actually.
Really?
So anyway.
Yeah. That's very cool. Anyway, he plays a great kind of Viking or Northman.
Yeah.
That's another one that's a lot more just, hey, maybe these are the way these legends started. this, I think he was going for something different. And so the tone, I think, worked. The, at times it was even just hard to see what was going on. But I thought the tone worked. I think he was achieving what he wanted, which was how dark a world is a guy who's, maybe not sick of Vikinging, but revenge has clouded his eyes.
Yeah.
So that kind of worked for me. And I thought all the performances were fantastic. Things will leave into the
post
story and everything. Yeah. In the spoiler zone. But yeah, I thought they were all great. They were all solid. Can you think of there was a weak performance in the bunch? Björk was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, and quick. I mean, she showed up a couple times, made it to the movie poster anyway. But and I have to say, I don't know if you noticed or not, but our Ukrainian sex worker friend from Riders of Justice was also in this.
I didn't catch that. Plays as the son.
As the son, yep.
The older son.
Gustav Lint. And I thought, where have I seen?
As I was watching
this guy recently?
Yes, yeah. I'm watching the credits. I watched this actually with my brother, who is, according to Ancestry.ca, slightly more Icelandic than I am, because and it almost kind of hits a theme in this film, given the messy relationships within my family tree, as I like to refer to it more as shrubbery with creeping vines and shoots everywhere. All right. Oh, that's good call on that one.
I had to look it up, but I wasn't like. So he was in the other movie about vengeance and toxic masculinity that we just watched 3 weeks ago or whatever.
That commentary on it. Okay, well this is perfect then to move out of the craft and into the spoiler zone. And I'll also take this opportunity to say publicly hello to Dragon Movie Guy.
Oh, hey.
Coming to us live from another incredibly hot place, probably thinking, suck it up, buttercups.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, thankfully in Fahrenheit, not Celsius. 106 in Vegas.
Oh my God.
Dear Lord. Okay. Moving forward. The story, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to start? I've got so many questions.
Sure.
Maybe this is, let me start with this question for you, Jim. When in your mind did it become, oh wait, I'm more in a folk tale or a legend? Was that established for you right away? Or did it take a while where you're like, okay, this is getting a little weird and there's magic now?
Yeah, I mean there was certain feats that happened. They don't exactly, their fighting ability is one thing. It might have been probably earlier than this, but when the ravens come in and help him escape, I think that's way in the third act.
Oh yeah,
so it must have been something before then. But there's when he's getting vengeance on his uncle, and he's decided to say, screw it, we're going to make their lives a nightmare, and he's sort of conspiring with Olga, his love interest,
and the witch.
And they're not little things. Like, he's carving people up and making sculptures of their body parts, and doing it in the middle of the night, and not being suspected of doing it. So I thought, maybe he's got some help there. These sort of strike me as not like Herculean sort of feats of strength, but just sort of feats of weirdness, I guess, in a way. Like the same. He's been given a challenge, and he carries it out, and he escapes unimpeded. Like nobody even suspects him.
Well, I think here's
at first.
For myself, I was when he has the vision with the seer who was one of the birch people, people of the birch forest, and she has obviously already been murdered. Björk's first time we see her in the film. Like earlier on, there's kind of a vision questing sort of thing going on, which but that was up to that point. Even at that point, it's like, they're probably high on some weird kind of shamanistic mixture of some mushrooms or something, which comes up later, of course. And so I was fine with, I was like kind of, okay, we're still sort of almost like Eaters of the Dead, John McTiernan's last good film, I would argue, The 13th Warrior, and I think it was a good film. Michael Crichton's Eaters of the Dead, where it's trying to provide a historical kind of, a historical, hey, this is the way Beowulf could have, what if Beowulf was really happened? The Grendel, the mother, all that stuff. What would it look like historically done? And up to the vision, when the first act triggers into the second, when he changes the direction of his life, it's almost like a reminder of his mission to avenge his father, save his mother. That it's like, okay, we're in the realm of myth and legend.
Yeah.
Because that's fucking magic.
Yeah, and I guess too that
and then
not a lot of
his feats of strength after that. Before he could be just a strong, the heart of iron, but after it's like, I'm swimming, I'm eating like a slave, and I still have this massive strength to kill all night.
Yeah,
pound steaks all day,
not sleep, and that kind of thing, and yeah. And earlier too, there's not a lot of it tends to be a little bit episodic. He escapes from his father's assassination when his uncle says, "Get the boy too," and he goes out to sea in a little rowboat, and then it actually says years later, not 10 years later. It just says years later on the screen, and he's got a life of his own. He's rowing a boat for someone, and his identity is obviously secure. Nobody knows who he is. So, but he's with a similar group of marauders, I guess. But he's got at a fairly low premium. But anyway, I think there's little aspects that are sort of hopped over, like how did he ever make it? Like where did he go? But
does it matter?
Yeah. No,
does it matter?
Not.
Like, I like the years later, because it's like, okay, do we need to know how he got there? Like, there's one line later on when we found you as a young cub, I knew you were different. Maybe could have had that scene.
Yeah, but it just it fits that pattern of when you're talking about a whole life as often you jump ahead. If you remember the old Greek books from the 70s and Greek legends and things like that. So no,
a hero is introduced. He did all these. Here are these feats. This is why he's worthy of this feat.
Yeah,
that they were called. Yeah. Was there any moment in the story where you were really just, wait, what? Like you're just taken out of it. You're like, where am I? Like you felt the story wrong-footed you?
Not particularly, I don't think. Where you're just taken out of it, or you sort of some of it was just the I didn't love a lot of there's portions of it where two guys, this probably happens 3 or 4 times in the movie, where I don't know how it showed up in the script, but it's just like, they're just screaming at each other. That aspect of it is quite over the top. And I And it might have been that scene that I was talking about earlier that reminded me of the Viking commercial for depression. Not to make light of it, but it's that I actually kind of rolled my eyes a couple times, like they were ladling. Eggers was ladling it on a bit thick, but nothing in terms of like where I was just totally stop the movie, look something up, or that go for a drink, or like,
How much
Christ, I need
does
some
gold
alcohol.
weigh?
Yeah,
How long
exactly.
would it take him to chop those people up?
Yeah.
And put them in a.
The stitching was very delicate. That would have taken him at least 2 hours. But
okay. Did you
how about you? Did anything take you out of it at all?
Or? No. I was good with it all. Was I totally riveted? You know what? I was having a good time with my brother. It was a lot of fun. My brother Ryan, and I've got a picture on my phone, which will not translate if I do this, but he's got the. I mean, yes, I know the anachronistic Viking hat with the helmet, but he's got the drinking horn. He gets into the stuff. He takes his kid Leaf to Iceland. Yeah, you know what? He's committed to the bit. And so it was fun to watch it with them. We barbecued steak. We had a good time, right? Guys movie kind of thing. So I enjoyed it as much because I was having fun with my brother. I did enjoy it, but was I held by it? There was only a couple of points where I was like, oh, this is getting interesting. And I think that is, and well, we've already said we're in the spoiler zone, so well in the spoiler zone. And this is the missed opportunity as well as far as the movie. There's Nicole Kidman, the big reveal deep in the, really the in the third act, and maybe we could have gotten a teaser of that beforehand. Just a little bit. And actually, I'm thinking of in the first act and the third act to just kind of give us a bit more tension on what's actually going on here. But there in the third act, she's like, hey, I'm the one who sold out your father. I begged your uncle to kill him. I love him. Then all of a sudden she goes all Jocasta incest and beyond Jocasta, because Jocasta was more, oh, this is don't look. Like she didn't know, but she's like, this is not going to work, Oedipus. Let's not. We have a good life here. Just close your eyes to it.
It's not you, it's me.
You know what? Where she hits on him, so because there's this opportunity to have all the discussion about fate and everything, because that's one of the driving deals here. He feels he is fated for this. It's part of his character's motivation. But there's his mother, and then she hits on him. And that was the moment I'm like, okay, all right. They've decided to do that to make sure that we have a pretty clear good guy, and they're still bad because she's weird and incestuous. When imagine the movie we could have had if at the very least he's like, I'm maybe not the bad guy, but am I the good guy? And what is wrong? Instead of making her weird, what would be wrong with and this is where I think another commentator made the, oh yeah, sure, you're taking it away from the neo-Nazis, but a whole bunch of white people kill, maim. The two main women characters are about protecting their babies and their lovers, and that the one fails to save her own skin. But what if she did? She's like, no, I wanted you dead. What is wrong with the woman saying, you were born of his rape of me? I kept him happy because that was my survival, but you both needed to die. And I'm good with that because you are just a constant reminder of my enslavement and my rape and my debasement. You know what? You know,
Yeah.
we're having this debate right now, or not we, well, yeah, you know what? Like all the BS that comes from, you know, south of the 49th parallel. Sorry, our wonderful American friends in the chat. Actually, many wonderful Americans, whether they're in the chat or the view later or have nothing to do with us. Having this ridiculous debate about at what point is it okay for a woman to have an abortion, and there's forever a this creeping line to none, but and this movie kind of falls into that trap.
Yeah.
You know that, you know, what is wrong with her just saying, I wanted you dead because I needed you dead. If he wasn't dead, then there's you. And I loved that man because he cared for me, and you were the result of my rape.
Yeah.
Why not? Then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what's actually going on here?
Yeah. Instead of making her a bad guy, I mean, she was she's a survivor of being what was the story that she mocked? Was that she was a fair maiden from Normandy?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, that she was a she had like, yeah, she was a princess in her own right and negotiated.
And
yeah.
so basically a kidnapped French girl, you know,
maybe
probably girl,
maybe even
probably girl at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so all of a sudden that makes her, you know, she's the bad guy, you know,
well, and
quickly.
creepy bad, like
Yeah.
gross bad, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a missed opportunity.
Sort of conniving.
You know, yeah. Like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, like a creepy sort of, you know, and you could have still had the movie. You could have had the story play out right to the very end, because what is one of the story choices given to him by Liam or what's his name?
Ethan Hawke?
No. Oh, good grief. Sorry, everybody. Got to pull up the cast list.
Sure.
Willem Dafoe.
Oh, Willem. Okay.
So
you're close, Liam. Yeah.
he's told us, like, hey, you sooner or later you're gonna have to choose about kindness to your family.
That's right.
Or your desire, your hatred of your enemies, and your desire for vengeance. What if she said that? Tried to kill him. He kills her. The kid. You could have had that whole fight play out the same way. You know, he does get to defend himself. And then you could have had the exact same ending where he chooses to go back, face his fate out of that, and recognizing he's going to his death to save his children. And also it just becomes a lot more important. You get Fjolnir. You get him more, like, because we do see a guy who's we're given what seems to be given the context, everyone was comfortable owning slaves, apparently, you know. Well, you raid, you get their stuff, and you get them, the ones you choose to keep. Hey, you want to bring your you keep. Pretty soon, the bottom of the frame is going to be at your chin there, Jim.
Oh, is it moving?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so after a while, I'm like, oh goodbye. Yeah, I think that's the weakness in the story. It could have been way more, like, if that could have meant, then all of a sudden you're not hitting a home run, but you're getting on base.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just getting fouled off. Then it becomes really, really interesting on a character level. Like, it was pretty good still. Don't get me wrong, but like, it's like kind of wrecking that one character, which would have made her way more interesting than just ended up being I'll sleep with you now. It's like, what? Is she so mad at him? Is she so, no, you have to kill him and the child? Then, you know, then why all of a sudden be willing to sleep with him?
You know, and
that kind of took me out of the story.
Yeah. This is a very angry, very violent, very brutal movie in a lot of ways, and it's not balanced off by anything either. You know, like, there's no, you know, for every this,
even the
you get that.
nurturers are like, "Where's my knife?"
Well, it's funny too, because I was thinking of any kind of nurturing, and there's animals, and there's other people, and there's children. Nobody's even tending a field. I mean, they might be in the background, but the dog, all they do is scream at the dog. All they do with the horses is ride them and chop off their heads. There's not a single act of nurturing in the whole movie. It's training, and there's brutal kinds of training. Why don't you show the boy what his life is going to be? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's another thing too, is that there's sort of not that there needs to be balance, but it's already a super serious movie, and it's just it sticks to the nihilism. The other aspect too is you compare this to something, say the MCU, where some of the times the big question is, does the character live? Well, with this one, the goal is for the character to die, which is admittedly kind of a novel pursuit, because that's and there is little aspects of that in Thor: Love and Thunder as well, where they're disappointed that they didn't immediately go up to Valhalla, or that kind of thing. So that's kind of a sort of an interesting take, I thought, as well, worth mentioning too.
Okay, well, then you're moving right into meaning. Before we do that, well, actually, I got a couple of things. First of all, we got a really active chat. I want to welcome somebody new in the chat. Walt65 is here from Walt's Flicks Picks. Good to see you here, man. I think it would be at this point. Oh, what did I do here? Oh. There we go. All right, let's talk about the next movie. Not that you want to see that. Why don't we give everyone an idea of the next movie before we
you know what? Hold on. I had it up.
You know what? I'll talk about the next movie, because it's
I'm struggling.
It's going to be painful. All right. Next week, folks, we're going to be looking at the 2022 version of Persuasion that just came out on Netflix. And we'll probably also talk about the 2007 version, also starring Sally Hawkins. This one stars Dakota Johnson, amongst others. Then there's the Sally Hawkins one, and then there's a previous version, and I want to say it might have been 95, 96. It could have been 2000, 2001. Anyway, starring Amanda Root. They will probably come up, especially in comparison to this one, which was, you know what? Jim and I are going to actually do a virtual parking lot reaction. I, of course, have already seen it. Jim's now back in town. He'll catch it, and then either tomorrow or Tuesday, at latest Wednesday, we're going to do like a little virtual parking lot reaction. And then, of course, next week, it'll be us. It'll also be our good friend, Catherine Johansson, late of Ottawa, now living in Kamloops. So we're not asking her to stay up that late. Actually, it's quite early, although maybe late for retirees out in BC. So looking forward to that. And of course, folks, if you're kind of wondering, you know what, I will once again encourage you to, subscribe, like, ring the bell, all that nonsense. And you can find myself at Rob Christensen on either Instagram or Twitter, and you can find Jim at Jimbo Zorn on Instagram. So give us a follow. All right, let's get into, actually, before we get into the meeting, let's have a quick scan of the chat. Walt said, here's a note from Walt65. On Viking magic, even the old Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis, the Vikings, had aspects of Odin and goddesses to change the wind. Yeah, no, there's definitely magic in this one, which, again, puts it in that it is interesting. I think that, the Jim, the constant imagery of that tree, which reminds me, that imagery actually reminds me of a couple of scenes in American Gods.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which not so much the television show as the actual book, the Neil Gaiman book.
No, yeah.
Definitely worth taking a look at. And actually, Neil Gaiman did a great book on Norse mythology recently that well worth the read. It's not the magic didn't take me out. I got it. I got, when they were bringing it in, they folded it in nicely. It's almost like we start in a world of verisimilitude, and then we just keep getting drawn deeper and deeper into this legend. I thought that was well done. What else do we got here? Oddly enough, there are ideas that Vikings lived in not just Iceland and Greenland, but also eastern United States, Canada. Yeah, there is archaeological evidence of that in Newfoundland and further down the seaboard. Not even ideas, but actual, there was the settlement. And here are all the arrowheads that showed that the indigenous peoples of the time regularly were trying to get them out and were successful in moving them off. I suspect other indigenous folks afterwards, like, damn it, we should have just kept doing that every time Whitey showed up.
And I believe the character of Olga, sort of the geographical sweep of the movie too, was interesting in that they went pretty far afield. I think they referred to it as Kievan Rus, which is
in the land of the Rus,
Russia or Ukraine, and I think Olga was either Russian or Ukrainian or thereabouts of that area.
A Slav of the region.
And she was doing a different accent, had a different language that they didn't translate. I watched it with subtitles. Well,
and into
there's other hints too.
But if you again look at the Viking, if you look at the Viking Age, it isn't just Scandinavia and then Normandy, England. They were beating up people, and when they couldn't beat them up, they were trading with them all along the Volga, the Danube. There's a reason why you can find Byzantine, like New Rome artwork and metalwork in, Viking settlements throughout where they operated, and even before. All right, what else do we got here? Cavaziel, DMG, aka Mel Gibson's Jesus, is from Mount Vernon, Washington. That's DMG.
Yeah, okay.
The idea of heaven and hell come from Norse mythology. Well, you know what? Actually, Matt says heaven and hell come from Norse mythology. Well, I think there's aspects of. A lot of, the Greeks had Elysium Fields, which I think is probably a little closer to a Christian idea. Hell, Hel. The Christian idea of hell is not quite. I would say that Norse hell was more like a Hades, a Greek sort of. Well, we're all dead now. Like unless you died in battle, to Valhalla.
There's an interesting thing with the language in this too. They on the subtitles they spelt Valhalla differently as well. So they had, I guess, they probably prided themselves on more accurate spelling and that sort of thing. But I thought it was kind of cool. There's a number of examples like that.
Yeah. Here though, Matt, and it's the Saxon, Danish, Frisian, all these language influences. So the words, heaven, hell, sky, skill, skin,
and language was a very important part of The Witch as well. I haven't seen The Lighthouse, but I remember they did some really interesting things with language in that movie too. So it's obviously an interest of Eggers.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the meaning, Jim, and what would you say is the big idea, or maybe the big question of the film?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, there's the whole notion of vengeance because it infects everything,
Yeah.
And is it it again?
It's why he's
Filmmaker
so tired. Are you
loves the
tired?
yeah, exactly. Oh, filmmakers love the hook of vengeance, and then they have to deal with the
Yeah.
consequence of it. As long as they're not Sam Peckinpah or somebody, they'll have to eventually say, "Yeah, it's pretty corrosive." And I think in this case, it clouds it infects his entire life. I mean, it's his main motivation. So there's that, and there's also the notion of fate. And at the end, Olga has a good line, something about the Norns of fate.
Yeah.
It looks like they cast another web for you to follow, and yet it's kind of funny that 2 minutes after she says, "I think it's twins," he goes, "Oh no, I got to take care of these 20 guys."
Yeah.
But
Well,
he decides to stick with that.
Yeah. Well, that very Norse kind of fatalistic. You know what are you worried about? There's a great line in, again, I think an underrated Viking style movie, uh, the 13th Warrior, but basically one character is saying to uh, the Ibn, it's just a shameless misunderstanding of this guy's Arabic name,
Yeah.
played by
IBN. Okay. Yeah.
played by for crying out loud, Spanish actor.
I'll keep going.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Anyway, he says, I don't know what you're worried about when you're going to die or not. You know what? Long ago, they cut the skein of your life, the thread, because that's what it is. The Norns are these women, who are, one's kind of doling it out, the other's kind of weaving it, and another one's going, okay, we're done. There we go. Here's your line.
Yeah.
There's your life. Period.
Antonio Banderas.
Thank you very much.
But I think the line, I put it on my phone. Could it not be your Norns of fate have spun another web for you to follow?
Yeah.
Is what Olga says to
well,
to
she's but at that point, she's like, she doesn't even believe it. She's just like,
yeah,
I'm grasping at straws here.
Yeah. We could make Tuesday's taco night if you come with me.
I mean, the way we know we're in a legend here. It's been foretold he is going to kill because he is trying to, but it's the reason why he goes back. It's not to meet it's in part to meet his fate, but I think it is the big question, the thematic question, you're going to have to choose between doing kindness for those you love versus this, anger towards that is the key question. And it is, while maintaining that Norse idea of that fatalistic idea, it's all in how he approaches it, which seems to be such a big thing for any of these folk tales, legends, myths that talk about fate and knowing your fate. It's not so much the key question. The question about the character of the hero is how they choose to face it. And he is redeemed in why he goes to face it. Again, way more interesting if he was like knew that, well, maybe I'm not the bad guy, but I don't know if I'm the good guy either. Way more interesting. But that he makes that choice, like a great heroic capital H choice, but because he's like, I got to do this for my children and my wife. They'll never know peace otherwise.
Yeah.
I started this and now I got to end it. And he did start it, just as his uncle started a line and.
Yeah. And it, I guess it would end with him as well. Evidently, his daughter, the twins that he's about to have, his daughter apparently becomes warrior maiden, or is where the shield maiden, or she comes basically a female warrior of some
the
renown.
Maiden King.
Yeah,
that was the more prophesying.
Yeah.
Because, well, so many of these things are based on someone will rescue us, someone will avenge, someone will. I think this kind of goes to sort of the meaning, or one of the assumptions of any of these kinds of stories, Jim, seems to be that idea of uh, uh, the gods through a hero, because it's Odin's bird,
Yeah.
fucking ravens, that kind of help him out when he's in jams, because that's what they do. That's what the gods do. But that when some terrible injustice, cultural injustice has been done, usurping a king, terrible injustice. That idea, which triggers worse, because then another king notes the vulnerability and he has to run, it just wrecks everything, right? So the gods will do something to set things right. Very Greek, I think where the pantheistic gods, these especially honor cultures, which, that there's got to be someone who will go clean house violently. Did you think, I really do, I think, Eggers, what do you think of Eggers, I'm going to take this imagery and this icon back from the neo-Nazis and all the other wackadoos? Do you think he was successful in that? Did you see anything in this movie that said, oh, that's what's going on here?
Yeah, I think if one of those dudes goes to see it, I don't think their minds are going to be changed at all. It does, as much as it shows how brutal everything is, and we haven't even talked about the hockey game or whatever that sport was, in the middle there. But it like a lot of war movies, or like a lot of movies with violence, it manages to both make it seem horrible and kind of glorifies it at the same time. I mean, how many times is Skarsgård sort of covered in blood with his abs glistening? And that's sort of imagery that any lunkhead at the gym is going to, feed off.
Get off on. So
I don't think, maybe if they were all wearing hair shirts or something, I don't know, or if it was even gloomier, maybe, or if Skarsgård was less handsome, if they were all hunchbacks, or I don't know. But
none of the slaves seemed to be. They were all pretty sad and pathetic wretches.
Yeah. So I both the kings were pretty miserable creatures. And when you look back, when Ethan Hawke's character, Amlet's dad, comes back from journeying, he's got women chained up that they're bringing off the ships, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And when the uncle takes over, there's just a wholesale slaughter of people, and people being thrown from the ramparts, and other people being stabbed and shot with arrows and things like that. So they're
like any coup, you're killing people who aren't on the program with the new king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, this is, in the end, he's basically just not even defending good. He's just defending his dad, which is the only dad he's known, and who also had his own bad qualities. So, I don't know. People will take from this what they want. I don't think it sort of cleanses it. I'd have to know more about it to sort of comment any deeper, but I think the guys who will think this is cool are going to think it's cool still.
Oh yeah, because it is glorified. It is presented in such a way, the violence, and again and yes, there is. It kind of undercuts its conversation about vengeance and the corrosive nature by, because again, imagine if Nicole Kidman's character, name I can't now remember,
Gudrun, maybe?
Gudrun, yes, Queen Gudrun. What if she was, it's like, I wanted you dead because, God damn it, I was violent. Just this, you know what, where he actually is kind of rocked and went, I may not be the good guy here, or at least I'm not the only good guy. This is
Yeah.
a chain of violence I'm part of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you can still have the same ending, but it has a different meaning. As
Yeah.
far as my question, yeah, no, Eggers failed that completely. If he even meant it. Like, and I really
Yeah.
mean that. Did you really mean that? Or was it something cool to say? Because
Yeah.
you're surrounded by a lot of white people. You know,
Yeah.
the women are playing the only time they transgress their role is like Nicole Kidman's character isn't even being a good mother. You know, her you can kill my son, like it's just like where she's suddenly becomes awful.
Yeah.
And having been in the military, I went when I was first in as a kid in the militia, and even the cadets before that, how much Vietnam movies like Apocalypse Now, popular in militaries.
Mm-hmm.
Full Metal Jacket, not so much, but still popular. But Apocalypse Now, like what are considered anti-war films, and rightly so. Fuck, they may not be fans of war, but they sure do know how to make it look cool. You know, like
Robert Duvall is so cool. I love that character.
yeah,
You know,
and
like,
even giving him a noble death,
Mhm.
gives a rationalization and justification. Whereas, another one that may not be as bad, bigger conversation, later date, maybe if we ever look
Yeah.
at those films. I think it makes Lord of the Rings a lot more subtle and a lot less glorying in war, even though there's talk of glory in war,
Mhm.
but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
Matt in the chat says examples of these declining heroes, gods of Hercules and Balder, heroes of Beowulf and King Arthur, leaders like Othello or Hamlet, everyday people like Robinson Crusoe. Nobody's like Winston Smith. Not quite sure. Yeah, I think the chat's having its own party right now.
Yeah. Winston Smith, I
and
think, was the 1984 lead
Yeah,
character.
yeah. Oh yeah, no, I recognize it, but they're obviously
okay,
having their
sorry.
own chat.
Yeah.
They're having their own party there.
Yes,
Folks, I will remind you, if there's a question you want Jim and I to address, at Rob Christensen. It should auto-populate, but if it doesn't, write it all. Otherwise, it won't highlight. Kind of like when I respond to you guys in the chat, I'll do at and then the full name. YouTube, if you're on your computer, it'll actually pull the whole name up. You just click on it. Or if you're on mobile, you'll have to type it all in. And it is what it is. All right. Jim, anything else?
Yeah, I had a question for you, and it sort of struck me, and I don't think this is the case, but do you think a case could be made for this being a criticism of depictions of Viking culture? Like in that it's so over the top and brutal, and it's an untenable situation. Like basically everyone has to die for the the blood oaths to be killed. And again, I haven't made up my own mind, but I was wondering, is this a sort of a stealthy way to sort of point this out, how ridiculous this bloodlust is?
No, I don't think it's a. Actually, I don't think it's a negative depiction of Viking culture. I don't think there's anyone out there going, "Oh, that's such an insensitive view of what was if we would trade if we couldn't raid." If we got to a facility where it's like, and they look and they go, "Oh, we're not taking that. Well, let's see if we can trade."
Hi.
And and otherwise, and that is a big chunk of all cultures and human history. You know what? Some posturing and then maybe trading, or this is going to be easy for us. We will kill all these folks. We'll enslave the rest. We'll steal their shit. We'll burn everything else. That's Yeah, I don't think that's a negative. I don't think he was trying to run down Viking culture. I think he was trying to be realistic as best as he could within what we know about it and what he's also trying to achieve as far as a legend goes.
Yeah.
I think it was just a, you know what? We can be incredibly violent as human beings, and that's the way it plays out. Showing us how it actually happens. Plus, what Vikings are going to be coming up now saying, "I have found this depiction of ourselves offensive."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Myself though, going back to, I'm going to answer the question I asked you for myself. I wanted to finish that. Yeah, he didn't achieve this. He ended up glorifying it. And I'm not sure, other than satire, it's almost always when you make fun of something. Northmen or is it Northman on, it's a comedy.
Oh, the comedy. Yeah.
That kind of hard to be, wow, I'm all about the Vikings after watching that. Even though it acknowledges its violence and it doesn't, for a sitcom, it's like, wow, there's a lot of heads getting lopped off for a comedy.
It's kind of hard to watch. Like, it's like, gave it a couple episodes. I don't know.
It's had some great moments, especially the ones, again, the horns, which is so anachronistic. Somebody showed, what are you wearing those for? That looks stupid. And he does a whole riff on fashion and how it works. And I am just trying to express myself. And it's just a great moment. It's things like that I think are far more effective at both like taking the sting out of a thing and also kind of, the thing you're all into ain't as cool as you think it is, otherwise, with that kind of and out of the way, I think it's time to get into our did I mention DMG says we really know it's warm north of the border for the Northman movie when Rob starts dropping sports/baseball references in the podcast. All right, folks, let's get out of this. Jim, are we giving Mr. Eggers a pass or a fail? Which is now a lot more interesting question.
Yeah. I think I give him about a C or so. Like you mentioned too, was I grabbed by this movie? Like, I could appreciate they were all sort of in this intense space at some point, and they all bought in. But did I find it sort of emotionally as engaging as maybe I should have, or even as I found The Witch? I didn't. So I'll give him a C. He had a visionary kind of thing going on here. He was making a swing, as you said earlier, which perfectly encapsulates that. I don't know if it connected necessarily. I'm not sure how he would have. Well, making things a little more complicated might have been the characters a little more multi-dimensional would have been one. I think you're onto something there too. But I'm not sure what else could have been done with it, but it wasn't a bad movie. It just didn't sort of get to where it was wanting to go, I think.
I couldn't agree more, Jim. It again, fouling off. Never, just never got on base. I think C plus. I could see myself remembering certain images, certain performances above and beyond the film itself. It might have been better off just either leaning, just say, you know what, screw it. We're going to do an action adventure as though it was real, a la The 13th Warrior. maybe just do that and be done with it, except that you're making, and we haven't mentioned, except, I think you mentioned it once. Yeah. Is there toxic masculinity on display? Yeah. It's almost, it's so obvious and overt. And I think that's why he failed in his trying to take this, icon, this historic idea back. It's like, no, you were accurate, and this is their shit. This is what they like to think of themselves as. And you never did anything to parody it or satirize it, or even kind of go, yeah, well, that's the way it worked then, but really not effective. What if they were all dead? Then you kind of go, well, that was fucking pointless. Yeah. Have Anya Taylor-Joy die, all these fantasies of destiny in that. It's like, well, no, you did meet your fate, dummy.
Yeah.
I think, so it's a C plus. There were some, to move into final thoughts, there were some really standout performances and a great look. I kind of like the screwing around in the muck, because that's a lot of the past. We live clean lives. Human settlements were filthy. I mean, they were. I'm not saying that the human beings were filthy. It's why they were always trying to be a lot cleaner than we were kind of led to believe. But that's in part because they're forever in filth. Yeah. No. So, yeah, it makes the Wild West look hygienic.
Oh yeah, definitely. Where are you sourcing your water from anyway? But probably that waterfall in behind you. After you make love in the hot tub, that one scene that they had with the waterfall behind them, and it was kind of fantastical. But
DMG says we'll know if Robert Eggers is deemed brilliant as soon as he ruins a Superman versus Batman, and a Justice League movie. Smart ass.
That was DMG, I'm presuming. I see that.
And although he's, it's caught the corner of my eye. Matt and Richard L., they're talking about Monty Python. And this is related to, I think we were just talking about, Richard saying to Matt, that Monty Python line forever changed my thinking about the Lady of the Lake. Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
Because some watery bint throws a scimitar
moistened bint. Moistened bint lobbed a scimitar at you. And I think that's a perfect, that summarizes it correctly. Robert Eggers was not doing that. He was leaning into it and going, this is awesome. As they were out in the mystic sticks of Iceland with the eponym, or the one named, the mono named Sjón and Björk, and they're all going, our historical sagas. You fucking fish. My forebears fished. That's what they did. They barely eked out an existence on that godforsaken rock that is Iceland. That beautiful, stunning, godforsaken rock. Like it's it's almost like the harder and shittier it is, the more they have to reach back to this past. That's like, they were thugs who ended up getting turned into fishermen, because you can't. They're just too far off the beaten track all of a sudden.
I haven't had protein in a month. The volcano killed all the plants.
You have to do all that disgusting. Ugh. Oh well. I say this. I say this publicly, even as me and my brother, like, maybe in a couple of years we'll all go to Iceland. We'll do the Christensens go to Iceland. I'm sorry, Rob Christensen. Yeah, here you can just turn around and get back on the plane. They're leaving soon enough. Bye-bye. All right. Matt, it's epic in the ancient sense and modern sense. I think he's referring to his conversation with.
Yes,
Just Brilliant.
Any final thoughts from me before we close off? Yeah, I sort of like the scale of it, the geographical scale. I like there was competing religions that they referred to. That was kind of
Blame
an
the
interesting
Christians.
aspect. There was the Norse with their beliefs and the Christians with their beliefs, and those made it the twain may never meet, perhaps. But yeah, no, it was there were some interesting aspects of it here. Yeah, maybe I'll give it a watch. Maybe I'll watch The Witch again. I think I'll see that. One note is that the one that played the father in The Witch was the captain of the boat that Anna Taylor-Joy escaped on.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah.
For my sakes. Yeah,
I believe. I didn't double check that, but I recognized the actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's cool.
So he's keeping the band together in some sense of the word, I think.
Yeah. Is DMG referring to the Ben Stiller, Walter Mitty, Iceland vacation part?
Yeah.
Which, yeah, their Iceland looks great.
Oh, yeah.
And the people look lovely. Sound lovely. It's not swinging a stick and a ball at anyone.
Nope.
Beat someone's brains in. All right. On that note, folks, again, thank you all very, very much for hanging out with us. Let's whip through the DMG. Thank you. Matt, thank you very much. Walt65, great seeing you. Richard L. and Katie Fowler, fantastic. Jelly Duck 100, Ahmed, our man in Kuwait City, great seeing you. Am I missing anyone, Jim?
Just looking over the list now, I don't.
Walt 65, I believe
so.
I mentioned, but
yeah,
I think we're good. All right, well,
got 6 watching, but yeah.
And then I also, again, encourage everyone, check out Jeff, the Goof Riders comment. It was a great comment, very insightful. Again, I quibble on a couple of points, but otherwise, great comment. And thanks very much, Jeff, for bringing that. There he is, Jeff Goof Rider. Thanks for being part of Audience Mailbag. All right, again, next week. We do have a movie next week, don't we? Yes, we do. Right. Persuasion. And that's a perfect time to one more time ask everyone to like and ring the bell and subscribe if you haven't already. Fantastic. Because, yes, we are going to be, we'll do a parking lot reaction. And then next week we'll do a deep dive. It'll be Jim, my friend, our friend, great friend of the show, Catherine Johansson, and of course myself, and we'll do a deeper dive into this Jane Austen classic and this interesting interpretation of it. All right.
You bet.
Okay, everyone, and that I think is, I think it's time to say, okay, bye-bye.